yogis, welcome back to another episode of How Yoga Changed My Life, a podcast. This is Mia.
And Adrienne.
And today we have, I'm being very careful with my words, a very special episode for you. Again, that joke of, I just keep saying very special, awesome, amazing. Like I need to make a list of adjectives.
I know. I say like super.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Super excited to share this episode with you. But today, we've done it before for myself, but today we're going to be doing it for Adrienne. We are going to hear Adrienne's yoga story.
Ugh, I'm really nervous. Now I know how all of our guests feel.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know where it's going to take us today.
Where do you think the nerves are coming from?
I think it's like when you look back on your life and your journey and something like yoga that's been such a big part of my life for so long now that I don't know how it's gonna encompass itself into like one little nice little bucket.
Yeah, I don't think it can.
I don't think it can either.
No worries. But before we jump into that, what's been up lately?
Oh my gosh, what's not been up lately? Work is amazingly crazy busy, but busy in a great way. Lots of students coming into classes now. Campbell graduated high school on Tuesday, which is just surreal. I just can't believe that she's leaving me in August. I only have like 2.5 months left with her. And I look at her every day and I'm like, God, did I do a good job? Is she going to be okay? And I don't think it's hit me yet that she's going to be gone. And that idea of when we go up there, it's going to hit me. And that's a scary feeling to know that like a part of you is going to be 18 hours away.
Yeah.
But I know she's going to do amazing. I'm not worried. I know she's going to have a blast. She gets a chance to kind of reinvent herself, kind of come out of the shell that she's been in for the past few years. And I'm looking forward to seeing how she takes her life.
It's exciting.
It is.
Very pivotal moment.
Yeah. Mallory's about to get her driving permit, which is scary as fuck. So watch out, San Antonians. I now have 2 girls that'll be driving around town. But luckily, she seems to be doing pretty well with the driving, and her dance stuff is blowing up. She's loving it. Brian is up in Chicago. He's at a Beat the Streets gala this weekend. It's a nonprofit that he works with that helps kids get off the streets and into wrestling. And it's kind of interesting because like ladies wrestling or women's wrestling is the #1 fastest growing sport right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's going up there working with Mike Powell and their teams, and he's on the board for their nonprofit, and I'm excited for him. He's going to have a great weekend. I wish I could be there with him.
It's awesome.
Yeah. What about you? How's your week?
Well, I can just tell the listeners, I've been having a very rough go at it. Mm-hmm. A little over a week ago, I was at school and I woke up in the morning just feeling very, very dizzy. I threw up and some of the dizziness subsided. And then throughout the day, it kind of just kept coming back in waves. And so the school nurse came and checked on me. All my other, vitals were good, my heart rate, my temperature. So I didn't have any other symptoms. And she's like, well, this might be vertigo.
God, that's the worst.
And I was like, oh, I don't need vertigo.
I don't even know how you
needs
deal.
vertigo, but I especially don't need vertigo. And so I was like really upset. I went home early. And the next day I felt a little bit better, but not much. And then the following day I got my period. So I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe this was just like a weird period precursor symptom.
Yeah.
Cool. Guess that's what's happening now. And then
thanks, Aunt Flo.
Yeah, so that was Saturday. Then Sunday I started getting sick and could not sleep.
It's crazy.
Monday I pretty much, and I'm just saying I had the flu. I didn't go to the doctor for this, but I mean full body aches, fever, chills, sweating, throwing up, throat hurts, mucus, whatever. All nasty, nasty, nasty. So I slept almost all day Monday, did not go to work Tuesday.
What a Memorial Day.
Yeah, I know. Threw up Monday and Tuesday.
Ugh.
Wednesday, I'm like, I got to go back to work because it's the last week of school, last couple of days with kids. And so I went back Wednesday, Thursday, we had a half day. Thursday, I wake up with pink eye.
Like it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah.
After you get pink eye, it's like, fuck me.
Yeah. That I did do a telehealth appointment for because I was like, I've, had pink eye before. And I was like, well, I think you have to have drops for this. And, had to send pictures. And they were like, well, based on your symptoms and what you're going through, this is a viral pink eye rather than a bacterial. It's like part of this virus that you just had, expelling and whatever. And I'm like, awesome. So I'm just using Visine drops for that. There's no prescription. So
but you don't look bad. Like your eyes don't look bad at all.
Yeah.
And you're wearing cute glasses today too.
Yeah. So I'm wearing my glasses. That was Thursday. This is Saturday. So I'm a couple days out from pink eye diagnosis. Friday, no kids. So Thursday was the last day with kids. We had half day. We had field day.
Why do they always do field day and it's like 1,000 degrees outside too?
I know, especially here.
Yeah.
It was decent. Well, 7th graders were outside, but I stayed in the doorway where I could still feel the breeze of AC just because I was like, I can't be out there. I'm going to be dizzy. I'm going to be, because I still don't feel 100%.
Yeah.
Friday, I had my classroom packed up by 11.
Nice.
I was so proud of myself. And not even just classroom. I was leaving the school at 11, which was awesome.
That's huge.
So yeah, that's just been having a rough go at it.
Thanks. End of school year.
Yeah.
Welcome to summer, motherfucker.
I know. But 2 full months of summer, June and July off. Super excited.
Mm-hmm. What do you got planned? Anything cool?
Yeah, every summer I work with Camp Founder Girls. It is a local camp here in San Antonio that actually, though, serves girls from all over the U.S. They fly in, which is super awesome.
So cool.
I will be going to Atlanta. That was the other thing. I thought I had bought my ticket to Atlanta and I could not find the ticket info. So I had to re-buy my ticket because I guess I didn't buy it initially. So I'm not rebuying it. But anyways, I'm going to Atlanta for my friend Stacy, her bachelorette weekend.
Going to hot Atlanta.
Yeah, it actually won't be in Atlanta, but I'm flying into Atlanta and then we're going to like a mountain house somewhere.
Ooh, fun.
From there, I'll drive up to North Carolina, see my sister and my nephew, and then I'll fly home from North Carolina. Those are my 2 big travel trips. Jair and I are trying to figure out if we can go to New York. He'll definitely be going, but if I can kind of fit it in with my schedule.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just plan on, I made a list of things that I want to do every week.
Oh, good.
Obviously, studying for YTT, this is a great time to take advantage of my time.
Yeah.
And study more. We recently, released an episode where we talked about the chakras and we did a whole weekend on the chakras, and we're using this book that's almost like a workbook that you can go. So I want to go week by week, I have 8 weeks. That's plenty of time. Week by week. Exactly.
It's a great idea.
I know, to go through the chakras and work through them personally. I'm actually also starting, oh my God, I'm like, and this. I'm starting my master's.
What?
Yeah.
Did you tell me this?
I don't know.
You've been sick.
I know. So that starts in 2 weeks. A master's in English as a second language.
No way.
Yeah. What's really cool is my district's paying for it. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I will say initially it's going to be a certification. And then if I want to do an additional year, I can get a master's. I'm pretty sure I'll do the year. I guess I'll see how I feel. But I'm taking master level courses at UTSA.
Go Road Runners.
Yeah. And actually one of our guests, Mingsha, is my professor.
Shut up.
I know.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm super excited. I think the first class I'm taking with her is pre-recorded, so I won't be live with her, but I will be texting her to ask her questions and all that good stuff.
She better give you an A.
Yeah.
You'll be like, look,
please
do this for me.
Help me out.
Help a yogi out.
That's also what my summer, I'm taking my summer courses for that. And yeah, just all kinds. I'm just trying to take advantage of my time. Invest some time into the Sangha, invest time into YTT, invest time obviously into these courses that I'm starting. Yeah.
That's exciting.
It is.
It's exciting. Yeah. I feel like this summer is kind of like a quality time summer. like my kids, we always have like a theme for the summer. You know, we used to do hashtags. So it was like hashtag summer of independence, you know, taught them how to cook and how to do laundry. And then we had like hashtag go build something. So we built like furniture together from like scrap salvage yard stuff in Chicago. So I think this summer it's going to just be hashtag quality time. Just really try to spend some quality time together, either as a whole family or in pieces and parts, you know. And it's interesting because I see a lot of like the little videos on the gram where it's like the mom is trying to sleep and the kid comes in at, you know, 11 o'clock at night. And it's like when your teenager finally wants to talk to you and you're like dead to the world, right? And that's usually the way it happens. It's like when you're exhausted, they're like amped up and they're ready to talk. And it's like, I've been wanting to talk to you all fucking week. And now you're getting me when I'm like, should have been in bed 8 hours ago.
Yeah.
But you got to take advantage of those times because that's when they're the most open, and you just have to kind of step up to the plate and be able to be there for them, because those conversations, you know, they're very, very impactful. We had a really good conversation the other night. Mallory and I did, and Campbell and I have had great conversations lately. And she's, you know, one of the things we were talking about was like going into the housing for school. And like she said, if I have to have a roommate, that roommate will probably kill me. She's like, I am gross. She's like, I think I just need to have a single room in like a suite. You know, I guess that's how they do it. My college, it was like, you know, doubles. There was no singles. And I think there may have been 1 or 2 singles on each floor, but that was usually
It's
for
rare.
like, it was usually for like a resident assistant or RA.
Too, yeah.
But with a lot of the dorms nowadays, it's like there's like a center kind of social room, and then there's rooms off of it. And so I think she'll have like a single room set up like that, hopefully.
Like an apartment.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. So as long as she has her own space to be herself in, I think that's going to help her a lot instead of having to worry about like getting along with someone else and living with someone else.
Oh, that's funny. I was going to say maybe having a roommate will be good. Like you'll have to.
Yeah, you have to step up your game, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I thought too. But I also understand that
I get
she's
it
going to
either
be
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like she's going to be far away, and if we can afford to do that for her, that's what we'll do. You know, take care of her the way we can. Yeah, it's just Mallory's like a social butterfly, so she's constantly in and out all summer long. So that'll be an interesting one to kind of nail down for quality time. But she's usually good with me about all that. So that's it. That's all I got for summer.
Well, I say let's jump into it.
Okay,
because I know you're trying to avoid it a little bit.
I am trying to avoid it a little bit.
Well, why don't you start by just telling us how you first found yoga?
So probably like my first real recollection of finding yoga was in college, you know, and having people tell me about stretching and flexibility. I don't think I experienced it in high school that I can remember. I do remember having like a DVD that you watched people do poses, and I remember thinking, this is so weird. And I remember being in college and I enrolled in a self-defense class. And when I decided to do that, it was for 2 reasons. Number one, I wanted to be able to defend myself because I was, you know, away at school. I was alone. You know, if I was walking late at night, something happened. Like I just wanted to be ready. And it was really funny because have you ever heard of those things called a Kubotan? It's like this little metal steel rod, and it's not very long, but it has like ridges in it. And so in my self-defense class, we learned how to use it. And it's like this thing that you put on your keychain, but it's a heavy thing. And they would show you like how you could like pressure point people with it or like stick it in their neck, in their throat, and like all this stuff. And I was like, I'm never going to fucking use this thing. It just weighed down my keychain, made it, heavier to carry. But the other reason I signed up for this self-defense class was because the karate instructor was so fucking hot. He was so cute. And so I got in there and I started taking these classes. And then I don't really know how it happened, but somehow yoga started coming up. And then, you know, as I got older and I was traveling, I was working for Coors Brewing Company. I worked in Virginia for them, and Atlanta. I worked in Colorado, which was a lot of fun. But being a woman in a man's industry back then, we were talking, you know, over 20 years ago. Shout out to Rima. She remembers what it's like. But when you're in a man's world back then, it was much different. And I had a lot of, you know, men that would treat me in a way that was super, sexist or disrespectful. I even had a guy like tried to follow me into my hotel room one time. So I remember thinking like, damn, I wish I had that Kubaton. But I think yoga just kind of came up because it was easy to do while I was traveling. It was something I could do in the room. It was something that I didn't have to have any equipment for. Because when you're traveling a lot for work and you're going into all these different hotels all over the country, you kind of get a hit or miss on a fitness place. You don't normally have time to go and take a class somewhere unless you have a membership to a big box gym that has a regular schedule. So I just kind of found myself doing like little motions in my room.
What were you basing it off of? What were you using
Honestly,
to guide that?
Just that DVD, CD, whatever it was back in the day that was like Warrior 2, Reverse Warrior, Triangle, nothing that was flowy, just like poses.
So when you're doing it, do you have these pose names in your head? Or are you just making shapes with your body, knowing how it feels?
It was more of like making shapes, a lot of stretching, like a lot of, because I'm hypermobile, right? And so when I was in high school, I was a cheerleader. I did softball when I was younger. Very active kid because I have a lot of energy and I needed to move my body. So I know that like a lot of it was like, I love to do the splits, so it was like, I'd be in the room and I'd do the splits, or I would work on, half pigeon, or supine figure 4, laying on my back and opening the outside of my hips. And traveling so much, it wears on your body, especially when you're traveling, 3 or 4 days a week and you're going to different cities and you're staying in different hotels. I remember like the occupational hazard I used to joke about was like, I would wake up and be like, where the fuck am I? Because I wouldn't know what city I was in, traveling so much. And, you're on the road, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, and you're working your ass off. Like I'm a person that puts everything into the job that I'm passionate about. And I just remember kind of like feeling a lot of pain in my body, right? Like a lot of pain in my hands and my feet. Ended up getting diagnosed with osteoarthritis, severe fibromyalgia, and with the hypermobility, I wasn't taking great care of my body. When I met my husband and we were kind of both in Atlanta at the time, we both had memberships to the gym. We would go to cycling classes. We'd go to yoga classes. We would go and do group classes together, and it was awesome.
So Atlanta, is that when you started taking yoga and being able to recognize like, oh, I'm doing yoga?
It probably was the second time I moved to Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the second time. So I lived in Richmond, Virginia. I was married before to a fine guy. We just weren't compatible for long-term success. So when I got divorced, I moved to Atlanta. I got a promotion at Coors and I started working hard on my career. And I was very focused on my career. Never thought about having kids. Didn't even really think about like what the next step in romance would be for me. I've never been a really needy, lovey person. Like I don't know. Like I don't need that. I never paid attention to the game. I never paid attention to boys and flirting or any of that stuff. I just was hanging out with people, But when I moved to Atlanta and then after Brian and I got together, we got married and moved to Colorado. And I think that's kind of when I started to practice a little bit more yoga. I was doing like a stroller strides group when Campbell was born out in Colorado. And then we moved back to Atlanta. And that's really when I hit yoga full force. So that would have been about, I guess I've been practicing, and I say air quote practicing, for over 30 years. But I've been practicing for about 22 years. Mm-hmm. When I did move back to Atlanta, my neighbor, Deanna, is one of my really close friends. Like, even though I don't get to talk to her all the time, like, she's the kind of friend that I know that, God forbid something goes wrong, she's going to be there in a heartbeat. And so her and I started going to a gym, a club that was down there that had hot yoga. And I remember the only reason I could go is because it had childcare. Because back in Colorado, when both Brian and I were working, it was fine until we had the baby. And once we had Campbell, it was like, okay, we can't have a live-in nanny. We live at 10,000 feet elevation, like, do we want to have someone in our house all the time? We both were traveling so much that we both decided like, hey, we'll pick a career to follow. And we decided to follow Brian's career, and I decided to stay home. And that to me is like one of the things that can wreck a relationship, right? Because a lot of times there's a lot of resentment or there's a lot of a power struggle. But Brian has always been so amazing with me. And it's always said like, my paycheck is 50% yours because I can't do my job without you doing your job at the house. And that kind of attitude to me is, I think, why one of the reasons why I love him so much. Yeah, it worked. And so I stopped working. I was with Campbell a lot. And then we moved back to Atlanta. Deanna got me into yoga. And they had childcare. So they had 2 hours of free childcare, which was like a fucking dream for a new mom, especially in a new area of town where you have I think at the time, Campbell was about 2 or 3. So.
And let me ask, were you already diagnosed with fibromyalgia? Will you say them again?
Fibromyalgia.
Fibromyalgia?
Mm-hmm, close. You got it all the way till the end. But I think it's fine. I don't know. Osteoarthritis. So I really don't know when I was diagnosed with those. Like I started having pain, like really bad pain, probably about that time, like right after, I don't know. I really can't remember when I was diagnosed. It might've been right after Mallory was born, actually.
Okay.
So
Mallory, but you had already been experiencing pain.
Yes. Oh yeah. Okay. All the time. And it was constant. And there was no real reason for it. And I just kind of figured like, oh, just push through. Right. Yeah. That's how, when I grew up, it was, you're not crying unless you're bleeding out your eyeballs. There was not a whole lot of physical, show of love in my house. Not a lot of like, I love yous. And that's fine. Like, it's just the way my parents are. Like, they're just not super lovey-dovey people. They're divorced and they're both happily married with someone else. And, growing up, I feel like it was always a push, push, push. My dad was very active. My mom wasn't so much. She never really found what she enjoyed to do. She did like to go for walks, and she's an outdoor kid too. So she would always be outside doing lawn work or gardening. She's a sewer, a quilter. So she's super artsy fartsy creative. But as far as like working out, I never really had anyone telling me like, oh, you don't have to push yourself that hard, or, oh, you don't have to, you need a day to rest, or these are some exercises that would help you get stronger here. I didn't get that until I moved to Atlanta the second time. And the first time. No, it was the second time because it was after Campbell. We've actually moved to Atlanta 3 separate times, which is crazy. And back into the same house.
Oh, wow.
The last time. So that was actually kind of cool. But then, got pregnant with Mallory, had Mallory, moved to Delray Beach, Florida for a year. That same club I was a member at in Atlanta was also open. It was like a super nice club. It was like the high-end fancy club. And it was only like a mile from our house and 2 hours of free daycare. So it was like, drop the kids off, go take a class, get to take a nice shower, even get like a smoothie or a coffee. Sometimes I'd go and lay up by the pool by myself, just to have that time alone. You don't have that when your husband travels 70, 80% of the time and you're in a new town or you're, moving around the country in different ways. So I'd have to find time for myself. And that really, yoga taught me that was, okay, just be. You don't have to go. You have to find that balance. And that helped a lot. And I ran a lot. I was so big into running for a while, and I was the worst fucking runner on the planet. Like, I could never, ever be a fast runner. I don't know. I think you're either born fast or you're not born fast. I don't think I could ever train myself to be a fast runner. I just wasn't, I'm not built that way, I guess. So when I lived in Atlanta, we had a treadmill in our basement. And Campbell would take a nap for 2 hours in the afternoon. And I would go downstairs with the baby monitor, and we had a TV down there, and I would put a movie on and I would run. And I would run the entire movie. So I'd run 10, 15 miles sometimes, but slow as shit. And I thought I was a runner, but all of my running I was doing was on the treadmill. And then it was like, okay, let's go do a 5K. Okay, let's go do a 10K. Okay, let's go do a half marathon. And I think it was right around the time that I was training for that half marathon. That's kind of when my body started to say, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you are not a runner. You should not be doing this. You should be doing something else. You know, this hard pounding pavement is just not for your body. And I never lost any weight. And I was like, growing up, I was super concerned about my weight, you know, just kind of similar to what you felt. You know, I was on a cheerleading squad. So it was, if you're not teeny tiny, then you're not a flyer, you're a base, you know, and I was teeny tiny, but I never saw that. And I restricted my food a lot. I, you know, didn't have a good, healthy balance in my life at all when it came to things. It was like, I was either all in or all out. And so my food relationship was more about restriction than it was of overindulging. And I was heavier for a long, long time. I'm heavier than I'm smaller now than I have been since high school. And I've been at this weight consistently for, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. But it took a big shift in my life. Actually, longer than that. It's been more like 12 or 14 years, but it took a huge shift in my life after Mallory was born. And I started, you know, I was running a ton, but I wasn't losing any weight. And so a friend of mine and I decided to do a really crazy diet. And it was one of those diets where you would like put drops under your tongue and you would eat legit nothing. And you couldn't do anything because you were exhausted, you were bitchy, you were hungry, and you couldn't have like certain foods and like foods that you think would be okay to eat, you couldn't eat. You could have like lettuce, an apple, a few strawberries, and it couldn't even be a big apple. It had to be a small apple. You couldn't have any butter, no sugar, no salt, like nothing. And it was for an entire month. And within that month, I dropped like 12 pounds. And I was like, great. I didn't cheat the whole month. I was just a reclusive bitch for that entire month. But having a buddy to go through it with was super helpful because I don't think I would have been able to do it without Kelly. And then legit like a month later, I started having trouble with having pain like in my lady parts, like in my uterus and in my on the sides of my, you know, obviously like my ovaries or something. So I went to the OB/GYN and she said, you know, you're done having kids. You've got some issues. You've got some cysts. You've got polyps in your uterus. Like, I think that we should just take your uterus out and we'll leave everything else and you'll be okay. And I was 30 something, like mid to late 30s. I can't technically remember. I want to say I was like either 36, 37, around that age. And it was in like September, October, and I had my uterus removed and, you know, fine for about a year, lost a little bit more weight. And then right after, about a year later, I started having pain again. And I went back to the doctor and she said, well, there's some stuff on your ovaries. I don't know if it's a cyst, if a polyp, if it's cancer. I don't know. She's like, but let's just take everything out. And so took my ovaries, my cervix, my tubes, everything. And so as soon as they did that, I went into surgical menopause. And most people after surgical menopause gain weight. And I was super scared about that. I was really, really scared. But at that point I was practicing yoga. I was working out. I was, you know, doing more actively. And so I ended up going right into surgical menopause, which is like a crazy thing to go through because hot flashes and night sweats, they're just no joke. And no one really explains to you, like, you just get really hot. It's like, no, you don't just get really hot. It like starts in a place in your body. And for me, it would start in my chest. And then it would just start to kind of slowly grow out from the center of my chest. And you would lay there at night and you're like, oh, fuck, I'm having a hot flash. Like, this is going to suck. And you can feel it starting and you've got the blankets on you and you're like, oh, I should just kick the blankets off. But for some reason your head's like, no, you can fight through this. You can fight through this. You can make this go away. Just breathe through it, you know, meditate through it. And then as it starts to go up your body, to your head and down towards your legs, you can start to feel the sweat kind of bead up on your skin. And it's this anger. It feels like anger coming out, like just rage. And you're just like, fuck it. And you throw the blanket off, you know? And I remember just feeling like, God, like this is it. Like I'm a barren woman. Like I got no lady parts down there anymore that are going to provide me with another child or reproduce or feel feminine, right? I felt a big loss at that time. But at the same time, I guess that's really when like my body started to change. And we moved to Chicago. Oh, the best part is that after my second surgery to have everything else taken out, it was right around Halloween. And we used to have a big kind of neighborhood get together Halloween party. My friends would throw it and we'd get dressed up. And I went as menopause. And so I wore like a gray wig, blue eyeshadow, bright red lipstick, granny glasses, a muumuu, slippers. And I had like a fake cigarette. And no one recognized me at the party. And I was like, what? Like, this is weird. Like, how do you not recognize? It's me. I couldn't get over that they couldn't recognize me, but I looked like an old lady. So then we moved to Chicago. And that's when I hit my mat hard. That's when I had a little bit more time. The kids were in school more. I did not have that club. I did not have that babysitter, but I was able to join a yoga studio. And I was able to do yoga for trade. So I was able to work for, I think I worked like an hour and a half on Saturday night, checking people in at the front desk, and I got free yoga.
That's awesome.
It was amazing. It was the best job ever. That's where I met Charlie, one of our guests. You know, Hannah was my boss there. Met a ton of my friends for life, my yogi friends for life there. And then I went through teacher training, and it was such a radical change in my perspective and myself and of others. You know, I think that I was really lucky to grow up with my grandparents being really close by. And both my grandparents were married. My grandparents were married for like 60 some years before they passed. And my grandmother was like the most positive person ever. She ended up dying of Alzheimer's, or with Alzheimer's, I should say, because you don't really die from that. You die from complications. And that was like a 10, 15-year battle. It was really hard. And they're my angels. They're like always with me. But I feel like I had like a responsibility to carry on her positivity. And I think with my yoga practice, tying that in, it was like I stopped seeing people in negative ways. And I started seeing people as like, you can connect with anyone on any level. And that just to me like brought so much joy into my life that I really enjoyed talking to different people and connecting with different people, and even like weird people that like nobody else would talk to, you know, or people that were assholes. I would find a way to connect with them. And it was almost like a challenge, you know, and I had a great little community of support there. You know, Brian ended up having a brain tumor, it wasn't brain tumor, it's a pituitary adenoma the size of a tennis ball. And it came out of nowhere. And the support that I got from my community to help out, like it was probably the most traumatic thing I've been through. And there's just so much like love and support that I have for the community of yogis in Oak Park and in the Chicago area, because without that practice, I don't think that I would be here today. I think my life would be much different. I think I would be carrying a lot more anger. And I feel like that not only anger outside, but a lot of anger inside towards myself. I have very high expectations of myself, and I constantly disappoint myself. And I've learned that the disappointment that I feel doesn't always have to be a negative thing. It can just be a recognition like, hey, maybe you shouldn't hold yourself to that level. Right? You live and you learn.
So obviously diving deeper into this Oak Park yoga community was very influential, very impactful. What did kind of like, and only because I know, right? We know each other.
Yeah.
What did your yoga evolve into from there? So obviously there was YTT. I know there was trainings after that. What did it all unfold to look like?
So I think it's really interesting because when we lived in Atlanta, Campbell was diagnosed with ADHD. I was also ADHD. And she also had like anxiety and depression and a couple other labels that, have changed over the years, but she ended up going on medication. I was on medication too. And I just kind of noticed that like yoga really helped me. And instead of like trying to force it on my kids, I just have been modeling the behavior. I'm sure I tried to force it on them sometimes, but a lot of it was watching how they were being impacted by life or how they were handling situations or how, I found that yoga helped me. So I would, kind of try to work it into my parenting of them. And Campbell like really benefited from it. And I had a friend of mine for a long time who would come over and do yoga with her. We went to a Bikram studio and it was like me and my friend and her kids. And we would do like these little classes with one of the teachers there. And God, that teacher, her name was Nikki. She was amazing. She pushed the shit out of us. Like one day she had us doing wall walks, like going into wheel where you like face away from the wall, reach your hands up over your head, touch the wall, and then walk back into a back bend and then walk back up. She had Campbell and I do that like 10 or 12 times in a row.
Wow.
And Campbell just really thrived with that. It was like she found something that just made her feel really good about herself. And she's practices here and there, but she's, she calls herself an indoor kid. She's a theater kid. She's very creative. But she does go and do things and move her body in ways that she likes to. And I just kind of noticed like what a big change it made on her. And as I was going through teacher training, when I finished my 200-hour, I was like, I want more. So I dove right deep into a 500-hour. I went into a 95-hour kids yoga teacher training. I did a certification to become a personal trainer, and I started to work in, different yoga studios and a couple of different, fitness clubs in my area. And next thing I know, my friend Lori and I are talking and we're like, well, we should do a family yoga class. We should bring yoga to kids. And that kind of really brought a lot of joy in my life because a lot of times with adults and you first introduce them to yoga, you can see big impactful changes after the first, lesson or so, first class. With kids, it just seems to be so much more impactful that it doesn't go away. It's something that they continue to do or practice or remember. And yoga is coping skills for how to regulate your nervous system and how to make yourself feel better about things because no one else can. And just that idea alone and the differences that I saw in kids that I worked with, it just really sparked a lot of joy in my life. So Lori and I started teaching kids yoga in different middle schools and elementary schools, during school and after school programs. And we did family yoga. And it was funny because a lot of people will be like, oh, I fucking hate doing family yoga because the parents are such a big pain in the ass because they just want to like get involved with the kids' practice instead of just practicing on their own mat. They're like trying to fix their form and everything. But I don't know, the way that Lori and I just held space, we never had that issue. Parents knew like, I'm going to practice, my kid's going to do it or not do it. And they're okay with it. And we got to bring in so much different things. Like we brought in singing bowls, we brought in oils, we brought in just different things that aren't just based around moving your body, right? So it's all the different limbs of yoga, whether it was meditation, creative expressions, partner yoga poses. It was just fun. It was fun, but it was exhausting. It's very tiring to hold space for that many people. Like we would have 20, 30 kids in class, and the kids, some of them that enrolled in the after school program really loved it. And we were there because they wanted to be there. And then there were those kids that were there because their parents wanted an extra hour of not having their kid around.
Right.
Or, the idea of like, my kid's got to be doing 1,000 different activities in order to be successful or be good or whatever. And so what I noticed with a lot of kids is that they would they would come in and ask to rest or do meditation or do restorative yoga instead of movement because they were tired.
Yeah.
And they were tired of like the constant stress on their bodies, whether it was the 4 different sports that they played or just being in a chair all day at school. carrying around a heavy backpack, like all of these things. And, it's just neat to see kids that come in and they would open up to you instantaneously. We had affirmation cards, we would ask them questions about their week, and kids would just open up and share things with us that they wouldn't talk to anyone else about. And I think that was probably one of the most beautiful things, is just having these kids like share stuff with us. Like, hey, it's Thanksgiving's coming up next week or in this month, and my mom and dad are divorced, and my dad wants me to go to Florida, but I really want to go with my mom, and I don't know what to do, and I'm like, oh my God, like you're in 6th grade. This is hard. Kids have a hard time. And so it gave me a lot of patience and grace with children. I'll go back to the fact that I never thought I was going to have kids. Like, I thought I was a working woman. I never even saw my life past 21. I thought I'd be dead after 21. Not like I was going to kill myself, but just like I could not see my life past 21. And then when I made it past 21, I was like, oh fuck, what am I going to do? I'm just going to work my ass off, And that's what I always did. But I never thought about kids. And then when I got married, it was like, yes, I want kids. And we had 2 amazing girls. But going through all the different yoga trainings, I just kept thinking, like, if we could get to kids, we can make a difference. And so Lori and I started Family Flow Yoga. We got it trademarked and everything, which was really fun. We did it all by ourselves too. Like, we didn't have a whole lot of guidance from people. We made some great money on the side. It was, something that was fun for us to do. But again, like I said, the more that we did it, the more people asked us to do it, the more and more and more it was draining. And I couldn't find that balance. And we worked our asses off. And if I still lived there, we would continue to work our asses off. But then it got to the point where people were like, you're so good at this. Lori's so good at this. Why don't you teach other people how to do it? And I was like, well, I'm a yoga teacher, so I do teach people yoga. Maybe I can do this. And there was this idea of like, who the fuck do you think you are? You're just a mom that likes yoga. You don't have a degree in kinesiology, sports medicine. You're not a anatomy, expert. You don't know the development of children, all of the facts and figures. But I did go through an amazing 95-hour training, and I went and did a shit ton of research on kids, and did a shit ton of research on developmental milestones and like temperaments and how kids develop and what can impact them. And this was like almost 10 years ago. So it was like 8 years ago. And I look back now and I'm like, God, I could write this again and it would be so much different. It would have so much more to it, but it was like a 200-page manual. Yeah. And I'm like, and then you kind of run into the fact of like with kids yoga, people want to teach it, but they don't want to pay for the training. They don't want to pay for the investment of time, right? They don't want to invest all of it. They just want to give me a weekend training. Teach me how to teach kids.
Well, and that's kind of what we run into with yoga as a whole.
Yeah. Because it's not accredited.
It's not valued.
Yeah, it's not valued. And we go through a lot to get there. And I would get really frustrated. And then now, as I've gotten older, I'm not as frustrated. But I used to get really pissed off. Like, you should go through a 95-hour, you should do this. You have to have a 200-hour, then you do this. And, you can't just go out and do this. And then I realized, I'm like, yes, you can. If you have the heart and you have the care, yes, you can go out and share yoga with people. Will you do better if you have training? 100%. And if you have the right training, even better. And it's more about putting the time, the effort, and the energy into your practice and how you feel so that you can show other people. It's not always about telling, it's about showing. And I did a lot of that for a long time. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of studying and wrote my manual and had my first training and, got some people trained up on it. And that was exhausting. And it was by myself because at the time, Lori's like, I don't want to teach people. Like, Lori's just like, I just want to teach yoga. I don't want to teach
just
teachers.
Kids.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, I want to teach grown-ups yoga and I want to teach kids yoga, but I don't want to teach kids yoga without you.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for both of us, is that we needed each other's energy because it was a very good balance, very, very simpatico. So, going through all of the different trainings and still feeling like I don't know anything. And I still feel like that to this day. 49 years old, And I look at yoga and go, I don't know a fucking thing. How are people listening to me? Who do I think I am? There's so much of that questioning. But then I realize that it's in my heart and I know it works. And if I can just give little tips and tricks here and there to people, part of when I went through developing my training, I looked at it from the standpoint of like, what do I stand for? Like, what are my principles? And one of them was the ripple effect, was the idea that like you can be a pebble and be thrown into a still pond and make a ripple. But if you can get more pebbles and you can throw them all in at the same time, you get a big splash. You can make a ripple effect in your community. And I hope I left Oak Park a little bit better than the way I found it from a yoga perspective. I got to do some writing, which is super cool because I was an English minor and a philosophy major in college, which my grandparents were like, what the fuck are you going to do with that? I'm like,
sell beer
and then teach yoga, which I guess worked out just fine. I had some great jobs. I got to manage different studios. I got to learn how to teach cycling and, teach strength training and develop my own class formats, and just had a lot of freedom, and I worked with other people on 200-hour trainings and led those. And then wrote my latest training, which is a 300-hour. And, it's just been a really cool journey through myself learning and then being able to kind of stand up and say, yeah, I'm not fucking perfect. I've got a lot of flaws, but I can hold space and I can be with you and help you alleviate your own suffering.
And I don't think you give yourself enough credit. You're extremely knowledgeable.
Oh, thanks. I don't. And again, hold myself to super high levels. And I am what is it called? The love languages, like words of affirmation and quality time, acts of service. Like those are important to me. And I have realized as I've gotten older that I need to be able to give myself those words of affirmation, and not always rely on others for it, because I hold myself at a high level. I hold everybody else at a high level. And I've had to loosen my grip on that. And that's hard. That's really hard because I am a very, it sounds kind of weird, but like I'm a giving person. If something needs to be done, I'll do it, whether I want to or not. If somebody is suffering or somebody's having a hard time, like I'll go out of my way for them. Like I try to make life a little bit easier with little things here and there, just people know that I'm there and that I care. And I've been hurt a lot because of that, because I'm an open person. So it's like you come into my life, I'm like, you're my new friend. You're amazing. Let me learn everything about you. Let me connect with you, which I'm sure is very annoying to a lot of people. But that's also opened me up to hearing so many different stories from people over the years. People will tell me their deepest, darkest secrets. And sometimes I'm like, holy shit. Like, you haven't shared that with anybody? No, nobody. I'm like, why the fuck are you telling me? But I guess it's a gift that I have. I do think it's a gift, although sometimes it can be really heartbreaking for me. I've lost a lot of really good friends because of being too open or being too vulnerable.
Trusting.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to like valuing yourself. Looking outside for affirmations doesn't help me. It did a lot of damage, I think, too. But I mean, without my yoga practice and without the ability to move my body, and there's many times where my body hurts so badly. Like I'm suffering with an injury of like a pulled rib right now, and this is on the other side of where I had a pulled rib before. I've had 3 hip surgeries. I've had 3 knee surgeries. Like I'm a broken woman, like it's like, but going through a lot of injuries, being hypermobile, having chronic pain, having to push that aside. I always thought I was really strong for doing that. But I also think that was a weakness of not being able to recognize that there is a need to slow down sometimes, and there is a need to rest and let your body restore. So yoga has helped me with that balance of effort and ease and acceptance of myself for who I am.
I feel like you've given us a few already. of things that people could learn from your story. But if there's kind of like one connecting thought, one connected thread, what can people learn from your story?
Suffering is optional. I say that almost every single class I teach. You can suffer. You can sit in it. You can be pathetic. You can be miserable. You can be in pain. But you have the tools inside to not suffer. You have the tools inside to move through your feelings, to move through trauma, to move through anything. And it's more about having the faith in the tools that you can develop with a yoga practice, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to just be movement and sweaty yoga classes, right? It doesn't have to be restorative yoga only. It can be meditation. It could be breath work. It could be walking meditations. It's a connection that you get with your body, your mind, and your spirit that allows you to not suffer, alleviate your own suffering. So yeah, suffering is always optional.
Adrienne, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
I know it wasn't necessarily always easy, but I know our listeners are going to be excited to hear about it.
I hope so. I mean, this is why we started this podcast, was we wanted to share stories. And it kind of goes back to the idea that that's one of the things that I love to do, is to meet different people and find one connection that I have with them and kind of blow them away. Like, I'm not some dumb blonde Jersey soccer mom. I'm a yogi. I'm a person that sees other people and the good in them with limitless potential. And if I can, be that little pebble in a still pond and maybe a few other pebbles drop in, we can make a big splash.
Definitely.
Sweet.
Yogis, thank you for listening. Wherever you're listening to this episode, it would be so appreciated if you left us a review. If you are interested in sharing your story or reaching out and just giving us your feedback on this episode, you can find us at Yoga Changed on Instagram, as well as yogachanged@gmail.com. We hope you are enjoying the podcast. Your support is so appreciated, and we will see you next Monday for another episode. Bye, yogis.
Thanks.